Islamic architecture isn't discussed as frequently as its Christian counterpart in Europe. When talking about the great architectural achievements of the Mediterranean region, we often hear about the Gothic cathedrals of the 13th and 14th century, or the achievements of classical Greece and the Roman Empire in such landmarks as the Parthenon and the Colosseum. However, we almost never hear about the architecture of the Islamic world, even though it equals and at times surpasses the work of its European counterparts. The main focus of Grand Islamic architecture was on their religious buildings, and it was unique in its use of geometric shapes covered in elaborate decorations celebrating the new religion. The Prophet Muhammad began the Islamic religion in the early 7th century, at first centering in the cities of Mecca and Medina, with the first followers being Arabs, the nomadic herders and caravan merchant people of the Arabian Peninsula. The new religion quickly expanded in both number of followers and territory. Islamic forces conquered much of the remnants of the dying Roman Empire and incorporated its ruins into their growing civilization, culminating in the Ottoman Empire's capture of Constantinople in 1453, ending the last piece of the Roman civilization in the form of the Byzantine Empire. The Islamic Empire grew from just the Arabian Peninsula in the early 600s to an area spanning from Spain to India and France to the Sahara Desert, almost completely encircling the Mediterranean Sea in 800 years. During this time, the Islamic world experienced a cultural, scientific, and artistic renaissance that has become known as the Islamic Golden Age. The Islamic religion has a rich and beautiful artistic tradition that is often overlooked in the Western world. Religious and secular architecture was one of the main ways that tradition was expressed. Muslim dynasties built rich and luxurious palaces, tombs, and mosques. One of the best examples of the Islamic style of architecture is the first great Islamic building ever built, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The city was conquered by Muslims in 638, and as a show of the new religion's coming to the sacred city, the dome was constructed in 691 over the site of the former Temple of Solomon, the place where Adam was buried, and the place where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son. Later, the rock in the central enclosure of the shrine became known as the place where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. The main structure of the dome, including its octagonal base and wooden dome itself, are of Byzantine design. The entirety of the building shows strong Christian and Byzantine influences of design, a common theme in Islamic architecture, which displays an architectural cohesiveness composed of many different elements of other cultures. It closely resembles the octagonal Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna, Italy, a Roman Catholic church considered to be an important example of Byzantine architecture. The dome is also believed to have been inspired by the nearby Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a Christian monument that also featured a dome rotunda. It's also derived from the dome's central planned structures like the Pantheon in Rome and Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. The dome became an important symbol in Islamic architecture, denoting a special place in the building. In mosques to show where the mihrab was located in the Qibla wall or over the mausoleum of an important figure. Once a region was conquered by Muslims, they constructed buildings with domes, and they quickly became associated with the Islamic religion. They were frequently used in combination with minarets and highly decorated squinches in the 10th and 11th century. They were either stuccoed or covered in elaborate mosaic tile work, turning them from just a structural feature into incredibly beautiful pieces of artwork in their own right. An excellent example of this is in the Marquinas dome in the Palace of Lions in the Alhambra, which is covered in about 5,000 Marquinas, or prism-like stucco decorations that serve to break up the form of the dome and reflect light, making it look like a starry sky. Another distinguishing architectural feature that became almost synonymous with the Islamic religion is the horseshoe arch. Arches had been used in Islamic design since the advent of the faith as a leftover from the Roman Empire, but the horseshoe variation didn't appear in its fully realized form on a grand scale until the Umayyads, first in Damascus and then in Spain, accentuated the curve of the arch and added the alternating color of blocks that highlight the shape. This is mainly seen in their biggest and most well-known work, the Great Mosque of Cordoba. The mosque is actually one of the biggest in the Islamic world. It was built using parts from earlier buildings and was expanded and renovated many times in its history. One of the Great Mosque's more distinctive features, the double horseshoe arches, were the builder's response to the problem of raising the roof using the short columns from a previous structure. The overall effect of more than 500 columns topped with double arches is that the mosque seems very light and open. Similar to their work in domes and mosaic tiling, Islamic architects also built highly decorative and elaborate arches, as evident in the mascara of the Mesquita of the Great Mosque, the area reserved for the Caliph. It shows the Islamic focus on intricate and varied patterns integrated smoothly into the structure of the building. Minarets are tall tower structures that were used by Islamic holy men to call the people to prayer 5 times a day. They were often located near mosques and were used for practical, symbolic, and aesthetic reasons. The Mawiyah minaret in Samarra, Iraq is remarkable for its sheer size. At more than 165 feet tall with a step spiral ramp that gives the minaret its name, Mawiyah is snail shell in Arabic. It is too high to have been used to call Muslims to prayer. It was so large that it was once thought to be a Mesopotamian ziggurat and inspired representations of the Tower of Babel from the Bible. In the flat lands surrounding Samarra, the minaret was probably intended to announce the arrival of the Islamic religion to the Tigris Valley, as it could be seen from a long distance away. The aesthetic aspect of the minaret is exemplified in the Mosque of Selim II in Edirne. Built as the masterwork of the Ottoman architect Sinan the Great, he tried to show that it was possible to match and surpass the Hagia Sophia, the premier example of Byzantine architecture, which at the time was believed to be impossible. The mosque has a massive dome rising about 31 meters, larger than the Hagia Sophia's, flanked by 4 tall and slender minarets, each more than 60 meters tall. Their placement focuses the eye on the mosque's main dome, inspiring a sense of awe at the grandeur of the structure. The architect deftly juxtaposes the height and slimness of the towers with the mass and volume of the main structure, and the contrast greatly adds to the building's beauty. The mosque was the basic unit around which all life in the Islamic world orbited. Its overall plan was developed early as its own type of building with specific requirements for worship and prayer in 705 in the form of the Great Mosque of Damascus. As with a large portion of Islamic buildings, the Great Mosque is partially made with salvaged materials from other structures on the site. This meant that there was still a very strong connection to both Byzantine and Roman architecture, and the mosque doesn't show the fully realized Islamic style of its later counterparts. It does, however, feature the standard rectangular courtyard surrounded by covered passageways with a fountain for washing before prayer, and for the first time, minarets to call people to prayer. Variations of that simple rectangular design plan were expanded upon and developed into the enormous and beautifully decorated mosques of the later Islamic era. Islamic architecture is often sidelined and minimized in both its scope and importance, when in actuality, during the almost 500 years of the Islamic Golden Age, Muslim architects designed and built some of the largest, most complex, and beautiful buildings around the Mediterranean Sea. Their mastery of architectural elements, such as the dome and arch, meant that their buildings could have striking aesthetic quality as well as rich symbolic meaning. Islamic architecture deserves its position as some of the most impressive in history.